Welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way for you to defer capital gains tax on the sale of cryptocurrency, real estate, a business, stock, so you can create and preserve more wealth. Hey, I'm your host, Brett Swarts. In each episode, I'm joined by some of the best financial, wealth, business, and leadership minds in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. We're also streaming on Expert CRE Secrets. So if you're listening to us there, we appreciate everyone out there. I'm excited about our next guest. She's on a mission to help 1 million people elevate their financial consciousness by helping them realize their true value in the world and beyond. She's had the great fortune to witness thousands of money breakthroughs while writing her book, The Mindful Millionaire. Her specialty is helping business owners overcome a cycle of scarcity, uncertainty, and economic volatility so they can heal their sense of self-worth and rebuild amazing confidence so they can build holistic wealth and ultimately semi-retire, which is pretty cool. A time where you can have flexibility and freedom, time freedom, to call your own shots and make a bigger impact. Please welcome to the show with me, Leisa Peterson. Leisa, how you doing?
Very well. I'm so happy to be here, Brett.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on the show. Excited to dive in. For our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Yeah, sure. So I have worked in finance in one way or another for over 30 years. I'm a certified financial planner, self-made millionaire by the time I was in my mid-30s, an MBA in finance back in the early 90s, and have been working with money and people ever since. I really got serious about helping people in the way that you described about 7 years ago when I left my financial advising practice and started coaching and working with entrepreneurs to break through the things that kept them from saving more money, being able to invest more money. I realized that there were patterns because of all those years of working with people that some people have great success with it and others struggle. And I wanted to get to the bottom of why did some people struggle so much? And a little backstory, I came from a home where my parents got married when they were 18, 19, no education, didn't go to college, very working class, and struggled quite a bit. And that was interesting for me because I was good with money from a really young age and they weren't. And so it infuses my work today of this fascination of like, why can some people build amazing wealth and why do others struggle?
Fantastic. Sorry, I was on mute there for a second. I was really contemplating what you were saying. It's really what was happening. That's fantastic. I'm going to look forward to dive into that and uncover those things perhaps that high driving entrepreneurs, CEOs, executives perhaps are missing. But before we go there, I want to take one other step back and help myself and our listeners get to know you a little bit better. And see, I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have given us to be a blessing, help to others. Some people call them strengths, some people call them superpowers. I believe they're God-given gifts, and they've been given us to be blessing and help to others. So I want you to go back maybe to the university days or the high school days. And what are those one or two gifts that you believe you were given, and how does that help how you help and bless people today?
I think that the gift I've been given, and even to this day, people talk about it, is incredible resiliency, that I could go through a lot of trauma and difficulty and seeing the dark side of life, and yet it doesn't stop me from moving forward and helping other people. And I think that what I've also learned over time is I love people. Like some people love dogs. I love people. And I just can't help but be really, really curious about people and what's their story and what's happening for them. And as a result of that, it's caused me to be able to help people in ways that are really meaningful. I'm a mentor to so many people, and they come to me years later and they're like, do you know that everything in my life changed after that conversation? And I say, I had no idea. And that's pretty cool. Even when you're doing coaching, that you can still be impacting people that way.
That's amazing. I love that. Incredible resiliency and the love of people, and then helping them to move forward and unlock, potential or things that they're doing that they didn't think they could do until they're connected with you, which is the power of coaching and mentoring and sharing our gifts. So fantastic. Love that. So let's dive right into becoming a mindful millionaire. What's the number one secret, Leisa, to becoming a mindful millionaire?
The number one secret would have to be understanding yourself well enough to know when you're trapped inside of scarcity patterns and when you're actually thinking from an abundant level. And in the book, I chronicle what does that mean? How does that work? But put simply, there's a lot of research about scarcity. The fact that when we are operating in scarcity, we have a drop in IQ of about 13 or 14 points. So we may feel like we did dumb things, and in reality, it's true. We end up tunneling our vision. So instead of seeing the whole picture of all the possibilities, we just see like one possible or two possible outcomes, and they're probably very limited. And we focus on those, and then we miss out on all the potential that's available to us.
Okay, so I want to make sure I got that. So understanding yourself well enough to understand that if you are operating in a scarcity mindset or an abundance mindset, is that a fair summary so far?
Yes. Good job.
Okay. So I guess what would be the clues or the evidence that you're operating in scarcity, and then we'll go to abundance.
Yeah. So clues, because I work with a lot of business owners, a clue would be, what's the cheapest way that I can solve this problem? Like that would be a perfect example. And I have lots and lots of these kinds of questions that I explore. It's like, well, what's the difference? Many times we think that we're doing the best thing by saving money, but in reality, we aren't, because we're limiting our possibilities of gosh, maybe I need to hire somebody because they know a lot more about this than I do. And I'm sure your listeners understand that. I think it's kind of a situation where each of us have little pockets where we get trapped and we don't realize that we're looking at the glass is half full, right? Versus, or half empty versus half full. But it's questioning your assumptions is what really is the way that we get better awareness of what's going on. And is that really helping me? Like frugality could be a positive thing or it could be a really negative thing, right? And so it's questioning those assumptions and why are you making the decision? Is it coming from a place of fear and uncertainty and doubt, or are you open for possibility?
Okay, got it. So yeah, the common question for the entrepreneur, right, or the business owner or the executive or whoever it is, right? What's the cheapest way to solve this problem? And what's the emotion behind that, right? So is it coming from fear? Is it coming from uncertainty? Where is that? And being aware of that. Is that a fair summary so far?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the opposite of that would be for the abundance. So perhaps if that's the first thing, that's the habit or that's the challenge, then what would be the counter to that? What's the better question to be asking?
So the better question from a place of possibility, and again, I think it's just so different for each of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. But it's like, I think you talked about God and our connection to a higher power. I feel like this has a lot to do with it, of trusting that there is so much more going on than just a fear, reactive response to life. And so if we can connect with things like love and positivity and source and what could happen. So I think it's more of a curiosity question. It's like, well, what am I not seeing here that would allow me to think bigger than just shrinkage? And that's one scenario.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Basically kind of going beyond yourself and your, the forest, versus the trees, or even bigger than that, like the world or the universe, right? The bigger. So trusting there's much more abundance and source than just our limiting small beliefs of frugality. It's got to save a buck. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Cool. So that's the first secret. All right. So we got to understand yourself well enough to, if you're operating in a scarcity or abundance mindset. And I'm obviously so much more in the book there, right? But what would be the second secret or second step to becoming more of a mindful millionaire?
I think this is a big one when you're operating multiple businesses, when you're, investing in different properties. And I know that I've been a real estate investor for 30 years, but what I've learned is really critical is the ability to trust yourself and trust the decisions that you're making. And that if you're making decisions that are based on past mistakes and past problems, those have a tendency to show up in your decisions and what you create for yourself going forward. And so being able to forgive yourself for any kind of mistakes or things that you're like, oh, that didn't go very well, and I'm holding myself responsible. We tend to repeat those mistakes again and again. And so the more you can tune into how much do I trust myself? And if I don't trust myself before I make this decision, how can I get help? How can I question, back to questioning assumptions? What can I do for myself so that there's no way that these past problems are negatively impacting my decision? It's one thing to make a decision based on experience, like, well, it didn't work this way, that's why I'm doing it this way. But that's not what I often focus on. It's the energy underneath of regret and uncertainty and just fear of making another mistake.
Yeah, really fascinating. It's the psychology behind it and the emotions behind it and everything that's going on. So the ability to trust yourself and really understand the why behind the decisions you are making, as well as forgiving yourself for past mistakes. So, which leads to the next question, which is, what's the number 3 secret?
So I'd say the number 3 secret, and there's really 7, so we're just getting into a few of them, is this idea of I am enough. And there is actually such a thing as enoughness. And one of the things that I've kind of made a point recently, because I do a lot of interviews, is I don't know that people like hearing it, but I will say that I have enough. I mean, I have a net worth of 3 million or so, and it's totally enough. Like, I do not have any interest in going out and adapting my life just to get more money. To me, at this point in my life, it's about impact. But the reason I came to that place of impact is because I fully know that I am enough and what I've created in my life is enough. And I feel like the rest of my life gets to be all about how can I make the world a better place? How can I be of service to others? And it totally changes the way we think. But if we don't think we're enough, we will chase after money, we will chase after success, we will chase after all those things, thinking that they're going to make us feel enough. And the big realization for me is we're the one who gets to decide that. And we're the ones who get to decide when all that other stuff isn't working. And it's time to actually look inside and say, I'm enough. And maybe that's infused by faith, that I'm made in divine perfection of the creator, like whatever it takes, but find that place, because your life's going to be very, very different from that moment forward.
I think that's so beautiful and so well said. And it's almost like escaping the jail of success or always needing or wanting more, right? It's being content with little, content with much, and being content with who you are and the gifts you have to offer and the blessing you can be to others, and escaping, I guess, the tyranny of the FOMO, right? Or missing out or being more. Is that a fair summary?
It is. I also want to say that I don't teach that this is about a number, right? That this is, each of us have a number. Like, it's not fair to ignore it and say, I don't want that or I don't need it. And I can't say that I needed what we ended up building. I look at money as merely a tool to understand myself and see what issues and challenges I've had in this life that I've had to overcome. Mm-hmm. And money is merely a reflection of all the beauty and joy in life, and that this was a way for me to make an impact in the world. And that was the number that kind of changed things for me. But another person, it might be $500,000. Another person, it might be $10 million or $100 million. Like, I don't judge about that. I just want other people to realize that you don't need to judge me about it either. Like, you go find your number.
Right. I love that. Absolutely. And different people have different callings, different gifts, and some are given 10 talents, some are 5, some are 2, some are 1. And the point is, you're going to maximize the potential of the gift you've been given. And I actually call this but I've kind of heard it. I'm not sure who to give credit to, but like the success, or you could even call it the contentment formula or fulfillment formula. And it goes like this. I'm curious what you think. That 1 or 2 gifts that you've been given, like, what is that? Identifying what that is. What's that unique thing that really, really brings you alive and energizes you to go make a difference? Number 2 is maximizing the potential of that gift, right? Like, really focusing like a laser to become all you can be in that 1 or 2 gifts. And then number 3 is an impact for others. And encapsulated with for me, it's God, right? And it's like, hey, it's a higher purpose for why I'm here. And if any one of those three things are missing or four things are missing, like there's a bigger purpose for why I'm here, then there's the fulfillment's not quite there, or even it's completely gone, right? Because you could say, hey, I got this amazing gift, I'm maximizing the potential, but I'm not impacting others. Or I'm impacting others, but I haven't maximized the potential of that gift, or I don't even know what my gifts are, or I don't think there's a bigger purpose for this. But when you can bring those things together, it can infuse you with fulfillment and contentment. Any thoughts on that?
Most definitely. I think that I did not know that I could make the impact that I'm making today in people's lives. So the only reason that I even thought I could do this was, unfortunately, I was in a really tragic circumstance, and it forced me to wake up to the fact that I had focused a lot on just being in kind of a consumer and having a job, or having a job that fueled my life and provided benefits and all of that. And I had this really horrible thing, or multiple things happen, but the last one in 2013 just woke me up, and I was like, I can help people. I don't know if anybody else is going to think that way, but I'm supposed to try. I'm supposed to show up and see what happens. And I'll admit that, it's one thing to work for other people. And keep in mind, like I said, I've been an investor and I've been building businesses and building wealth for 30 years. But there is something very different when you put yourself out there in like a digital business like we do, and you're on a podcast and you're making yourself visible. Like, I had a lot of work to do on my self-confidence because I just didn't think that I could do what I'm doing. And so it's only been in like growing and expanding and then getting that feedback from other people that has allowed me to say, yeah, I like this and I like these opportunities, and it feels more meaningful than just going to the pool and having, a cocktail or something. Like that is not how I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life. And so I just had to be in some rough situations to get out of my fear zone and say, why not me? Why not try?
That's beautiful. And by the way, similar circumstances as well, right? I've been podcasts about a year and a half, and I first got on like some other podcasts like maybe 2 years ago. And I remember recording my first YouTube video, Leisa, and it was like the most awkward, like, I don't want to be on camera. Like the lighting was bad. The content was minimal. Right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but I just kept thinking about, I need to get out of my own way, right? I need to get out of my own way, right? I have a gift. I believe I have a gift and I want to bless others, but I need to get out of my own way and push through the uncomfortable and the fear and the uncertainty and all of that. So talk about how you got out of your own way to write the book, to start the podcast, to put yourself out there. What was that? Take us to that moment, and what were the things that you did to do that?
Yeah, there were a couple pivotal moments. After I left my financial advising job, I immediately started teaching people. And at that time, we didn't even have Zoom. We just had like conference call classes. And I had about 35 people in this class. And at one point, somebody sent me something, and it was a document that was kind of like a blog that was about scarcity and abundance. And when I read it, I found myself like on the floor crying, because I realized, just even though I thought I could help people at that time, I was like, I have been living in scarcity my whole life, and I can't, I'm not prepared to teach people. Like, I've got a lot of work to do. And so that was a big pivotal moment. But then fast forward a few years later, I got out of my own way. I said, it's okay. You don't have to have all the answers. You can still teach. You know a lot about money, and you know a lot about their people's psyche. And I started coaching people. And I was writing my book, and I was really struggling about how to write and how to really write meaningful stories that would impact people and cause transformation. And I wrote a book that was more fiction. I was trying to write a fiction book, and I'm not a great writer. And I had a coach, and I brought her the book, and I was so proud. And she's like, this can take us like 5 years for you to learn how to do this. And I was just like, oh, here we go again. I've just wasted a year of my life writing. And I went back to one of my clients, and I had a sense that I was going to have to go back to writing nonfiction, which is ultimately what the book turned into. And I went to one of my clients I had been working with for like a couple of years. And I said, I think that I'm not going deep enough in this work. I think that I'm missing things. And I think that the only way that I'm going to be able to write this book and actually have the impact in people's lives that I want to is we have to start all over again. And would you unpack your life story for me and answer some really hard questions for me about who you are and why you are, doing the things that you're doing with money? And we started all over again. And what ended up happening from that was I found 7 different people to basically give me their life stories over a series of, hundreds of hours of interviews that allowed me to start really understanding these patterns that I had been curious about for, 20, 30 years. Now I was actually able to make a big impact with the book and their stories. And then that informed the process that I created.
That is so beautiful and so amazing. And I love how you unpack that. And I love how it wasn't easy. And the very fact, this is a thought too, the very fact that you struggled with feeling adequate to do these things is the very fact that makes you qualified to do these things, right? Because a coach and a guide, and it's kind of thing I've learned, and I think, or it's been told to me, but I've kind of come to realize is that it's just someone who's a couple steps ahead of you, right? Who's been where you're at. When it's the person who's so far ahead and maybe has never been where you're at, it's actually more challenging for that person to teach the person was just there last year, last month, 2 years ago, right? On whatever part of the journey they're in, the vulnerability is really important to share that so that people can feel like they can actually do it. Like, oh, if Leisa could do it, she was where I was at. She can empathize. She can understand. I can do that. And the second thing I want to pull out of this is you were maximizing the potential of that gift. So you knew you had the gift. You knew you wanted to make an impact. But you did the work in order to spend the hours and the time and the energy honing the message and the method, right? To be able to maximize that gift to now go make a bigger impact. So I applaud you for doing that and pushing through the challenge. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it was a real testament when I had an agent who had reached out to me several years ago, was reading my blog post, and she was the one who was really like, let's go traditional publishing, which a lot of people, there's pros and cons to that. But I knew if my goal was impact, traditional publishing, if I could have that happen, would be the biggest way to make that mark in the world. The other thing is I included everything I teach in my book. It's not one of those books where you're just getting a part of it and you've got to come work with the person. Like, my agreement was I'm going to give it all. And if I have no business left because everybody can just use the book, that was okay too. But the agent and ultimately St. Martin's Publishing, who bought the book, like, everybody who has appeared to bring this into reality has shared this interest that I have, that there are different ways to look at some of life's problems, and especially those with money. And it became like this group exercise that I feel like was so supported in so many ways. And I still feel that way today. And I just share that because I think that sometimes when we write books and we spend 5 years, and I wrote like 1 million words to get down to, the 280, 300 pages in the book. When we do that, we're like, well, I deserve to receive something back in return. And that was the opposite. Like, that would be scarcity mindset. To me, I only wanted to create this if it could just go out there and help people for as low as, 15, 20 bucks anywhere in the world. And that ended up happening. Yeah.
Fantastic. Love it. Yeah. You're working through the challenges and the things that you're teaching in the book along the way. It's along the journey. So now you have the story with that. Absolutely love it. Okay, great. So we're going to shift a little bit. So we touched on that. Now we're going to shift into finance, capital gains tax, real estate, kind of this part of the discussion. And the question for you, Leisa, is this. By the way, if you want to learn more about Leisa Peterson, you can go to wealthclinic.com. That's wealthclinic.com. But the question is this: on the capital gains tax front, what's the biggest frustration you, a client or friend or family members have when it comes to capital gains tax deferral and or the 1031 exchange?
So we're going through this right now, so I can speak personally. We have a commercial building, and my husband's exhausted by the maintenance of the commercial building, getting those phone calls on Friday night, right before you're going out to dinner, like the air conditioning is leaking or whatever it is. And so we have reached this point where it was really exciting 6 years ago. Right now, we can't wait to get rid of it. And so we're exploring these things. And I think that, the 1031 exchange, from my perspective today, knowing what we're dealing with, the idea that I have to go buy another property and do this again when we're trying to get out of it, like that's completely unacceptable. So then you go to the whole other side of the spectrum, which is, I guess we're just going to pay taxes on all this gain that we've made. And that's not very attractive because we're really, really careful about our tax management strategy and how to maximize it. And you don't just pop in and make that decision with like a couple months. But my husband's so frustrated that he's like, I just want to do it. I don't even care, right? And so that's how I feel about the work that you do and why I'm such a fan.
Well, I appreciate it, Leisa. And that's exactly why we started the company Capital Gains Tax Solutions. And it was born out of the 2008 crash, right? Because people knew they were overpaying. They wanted to be out of the toilet trash liability. They wanted to have some liquidity, some diversification, the ability to time the real estate market, or maybe never go back in ever again, right? And they didn't have a great solution. So some ended up 1031ing, everything crashed. Some lost half, some lost all. And I was stuck trying to negotiate with the banks and with the owners to hold on to their properties. Fast forward, a lot of those clients are now 10 years older, 11 years, 12 years older, and they're going, I don't want to go through this again, right? If I can diversify and get liquidity, get capital gains tax deferral, maybe even solve some estate tax challenges, the Deferred Sales Trust is an amazing way to do that. By the way, you can learn more about that at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. All that being said, Leisa, we're running out of time. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes.
Okay. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget you'd make sure to tell yourself to do?
Buy more real estate. Funny that it's a full circle, but
for sure.
Yeah,
buy
we
more
bought
then,
a
right?
lot.
So you could sell more now, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Second question would be, of course, your wonderful book, The Mindful Millionaire. Besides that book, what's the other number one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
I would have to say the book The Goal by Elihu Goldblatt. It's such a wonderful book, especially when you're building businesses and you're trying to understand, what's going wrong, what's not working, the roadblocks that you need to overcome. So that'd be my most recommended.
Awesome. Next question. What are you most curious about right now?
I'm really curious about creating my business so that it runs with me having a very empty schedule. Like that's what I'm focused on right now. And we're doing it. We have recurring revenue and membership programs and ways that I can touch a lot of people's lives, but not have it take this huge toll on me. I haven't done a lot of private coaching for a few years. It's all been groups. And it takes a while to figure out how to make a big impact in people's lives in a group format. And I take that seriously. And that's what we figured out. And so now it's just kind of building the system so that it can run with me just showing up and being in my brilliance.
Absolutely love that. Same here. And for so many reasons, it's the time and energy and stress freedom is what I call that. As well, by the way, a little nugget here. If you guys haven't read or looked at Run Like Clockwork, it's a great system to help to delegate and spending more time designing and less time doing the work and deciding. Really amazing. Run Like Clockwork. Check that out. Second to last question. What's your favorite leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
So I think it changes depending on what I'm working on, but Warren Buffett's quote that if you don't figure out how to make money while you sleep, then you're going to work till you die. And I like that one right now because I'm trying to help a lot of people with passive income solutions. And so that's the one today.
I love that one. I can't say I've ever heard that one, but it's great. The other one I like by Warren too is when the tide goes out, you see who's been skinny dipping, right? And So I think that's those are two very, very applicable things for today's environment for sure, right? So last question. After all your success, helping all of the people you've helped, your coaching program, the Mindful Millionaire book, helping people unlock freedom with their finances in their life, how do you stay centered in your values, and how do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach for new heights?
I stay encouraged through my connection to higher power, to my family, to the deepest relationships in my life. And if those are on track, then I feel like everything can be worked out. But if those aren't on track, then all my attention will go to those until I'm like, okay, we're in a good place. And it's always going to happen where there's ebbs and flows, ups and downs, but everything starts with unconditional love. That's how I live my life, and that's how I want to make sure that I'm creating an environment around me that supports that.
Absolutely love it, Leisa Peterson. I so appreciate your time, energy, and sharing so much wisdom. I want to encourage you to keep using the gifts of being resilient, incredibly resilient, and loving people and helping people unlock wealth in a new way. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, would you remind them one last time what's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, they can go to wealthclinic.com, and I also have a free gift that you can go and get a meditation it's at wealthclinic.com/vision. So if you're curious about this conversation, you're like, what's going on? That'd be a great way.
Perfect. Thanks, Leisa, for being on the show. I want to thank our listeners also for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, also streamed on expertcresecrets.com, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way for you to defer capital gains tax and grow your wealth and perhaps get some time, energy, and some freedom from the 1031 exchange or toilets, trash, and liability, and the ability to get on the sidelines. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to learn more about that. We so appreciate everyone out there listening. Please rate, review, subscribe. That means more than you know to us. And talk to